If you haven't heard the news in one of our episodes yet, we've reopened our Ghosts of Harrenhal merchandise store to kick off the summer. So for the time being, you can visit ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com to stock up and look cool in the summer months. Or, in the southern hemisphere, it's a great time to buy a hoodie or sweatshirt. Regardless, don't delay or you could miss your chance. The link is in every episode's show notes.
Hello, welcome to Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 294 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 22 of A Dance with Dragons, which is Tyrion 6.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, unless of course you have a Buy Me a Coffee standard tier that includes spoilers. Well, then we are going to spoil things for you, but regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I am doing well, Steve. I'm doing well. How are you? No, we don't have a guest host. It's not. It's just Simon.
So for long-term listeners, you might remember my brother teased me by calling me Steve. He did a video of the podcast in which he had a shrine to Mackelly and then a little photo of me which had a caption of Steve underneath it.
I do recall this, yes.
Mm-hmm. I know you recall.
I recall it, of course, yes. Hopefully our listeners do.
And then a few months back, the landlord of the bar that Carson and I used to go to, who he loved Carson, he talked to all the time, and then he called me Steve.
Less thrilled about you, I guess.
Apparently. And then round 3 happened this week, so my senior vice president was in town, and I had 3 all-day meetings with her, and she did the rounds pressing the flesh before, and she said, "Oh, you're Steve." I was like, God, not another one.
Not another. Has Rob been getting to everybody? That's the
exactly.
He's put out a memo to the whole world.
She had a me mask for fighting carpenter bees or whatever they're called.
Yeah. Oh well, that was pretty fun.
And the thing is, I've met this woman like 5 times, and like, I'm charming. I ought to be memorable.
Right. Well, you are memorable. You're memorable. She knows your name begins with an S.
Yeah, she's closing in on it. Eventually she'll get there.
I
might need something from her eventually, like a promotion, for instance. You know, it'd be nice if she knew who I was.
Yeah, she'll give the promotion to the wrong person.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm coming hot foot from 3 full day meetings with her. I'm absolutely enervated.
I bet. Yeah.
And offline, I'll tell you what I thought of those meetings, but
okay.
you never know. She may be a listener, given that she called me Steve.
Right.
Anything going on with you?
Not so much. Just the heat of the summer. We cracked triple digits 3 times so far this week.
That's the other thing about this. Normally when I go to work, I get out of my car and I sprint for the air conditioning and I just stay in that building the whole time. Well, okay, then I go and play soccer in the miserable heat. But
yeah, right in the middle of the day.
Yeah. Ignore that. But because of these all-day meetings, and these all-day meetings were in the next building. So I had to go in the morning to my office and do as much work as I could beforehand, then schlep over to this other building, which is already hot by 9 o'clock. And then that building doesn't have a cafeteria, so then schlep back to my building for lunch and back to the other building. I was like, why am I walking in this heat?
Yeah, getting those steps in. Unfortunately, getting the sweat in as well.
Oh, man, yeah. It has been very, very hot, that's for sure.
Yeah, we've been trying to keep all the blinds and drapes closed in the house.
That's what I do too. Yeah. It's like, keep it like a little sort of like cave. I noticed that Penny the dog, she goes and hides in the darkest corner. So I'm like, dogs are smarter than humans. So
right.
She knows what she's doing.
You're there schlepping back and forth from building to building.
I know. And
she's
I'm
hiding in the darkest corner.
I'm wearing button-up shirts with long sleeves as well. I'm absolutely melting. I did get... we had a little thunderstorm earlier, so that's usually a good sign, but it's still going to be hot for a while. But I got a little bit of good news out of this, because for the first time that I can remember, our company forbade us from playing soccer because it was so hot.
Oh, okay.
Which didn't affect me because I was stuck in these meetings anyway. But today was supposed to be the first round of the playoffs, and my team had a bye because we are fantastic.
Uh-huh.
And so we were going to be joining in the second round of the playoffs, which was scheduled for Monday. But I was planning to go to the beach this weekend, and I was going to have to cut my beach weekend short because of this soccer match.
Oh, wow.
But the infernal heat cancelled the soccer today, so now the first round of the playoffs has been moved to Monday, and I can go to the beach and have a nice weekend. So yeah,
right. The gods shine on your
just a little bit
playoff chances.
Just a little bit. I'd already told Carson we were coming home early from the beach if necessary. She
I can't even imagine.
Put my foot down on this.
Yeah. Right. With your final say.
Yeah, I was like, please don't make me miss the soccer. I will say, actually, the one last laugh about being called Steve by my senior vice president was telling you about it in an instant message, and just the length and all capsness of the ha 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 did make me laugh. So.
Uh-huh. I had a meeting with a mutual friend of ours later who was also in those meetings, and I found a way to work in calling you Steve into that meeting.
He mentioned.
I bet.
All right, let's get down to business. How did we leave Tyrion Lannister? The last we saw of Tyrion, he's drowned, so we don't need this chapter. Oh wait. There's more? He was being dragged under the Royne by a stone man, and the Shy Maid having been attacked by the sufferers of greyscale. He was headed to his watery grave in the knowledge that Griff was none other than Lord John Connington, and that young Griff was none other than Aegon Targaryen. No, not that one. The son of Rhaegar and Elia, somehow not dead. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
We would have thought both of those Aegons were long
dead.
I mean,
plus, this one looks way younger than the other one we know.
Right, yeah.
And also not dead. But again, this stupid book, the timelines, who knows? Maybe it is that Aegon.
Right. It's Aegon the Conqueror.
It'd be funny, actually, if this whole book, the sort of north-south divide of this was 100 years apart, and they just never bothered to mention it,
Right. All right, well, so Tyrion dreams that the Shrouded Lord of the Sorrows is his father. As the apparition tries to kiss him, Tyrion wakes with a start. He's on the Shy Maid with Haldon and Duck. He smells of vinegar, and Haldon explains that Lemore has been applying it to ward off greyscale. Lemore also forced the water out of Tyrion's lungs when he had been dragged aboard by Griff, while young Griff refused the suggestion from Yandri that they throw the minnow back.
Haldon tosses a knife towards Tyrion and has him prick his fingers and toes to ensure that he still has feelings, the loss of which is a first sign of greyscale, and any appendage showing signs thereof needs to be removed immediately. Tyrion asks if he should do the same to his manhood. Haldon suggests that it would not hurt. Tyrion correctly disagrees. Tyrion is fed, but notes that Haldon keeps his distance. Lemore emerges and rushes to hug Tyrion. Young Griff is less effusive.
They're moored at a pier in Selhorys, town on the Royne that is uniquely on the east side of the river. Ysilla and Yandri have gone into town, and young Griff is peeved to be left out. But since the Sorrows, they'd spotted Dothraki 3 times, and they're not risking the young prince. Volantis has sent war galleys to dissuade the Dothraki, but Khal Tyrion wonders if it might be a feign. Threaten the town, draw out defenders of Volantis, and then attack the bigger prize. Tyrion thinks about Lemore now in Mufti, which I had to look up what that term means.
When I wrote it, I was like, that's going to be great for him reading that. Today, I described someone as a lovely lad. One of the people I was talking to was like, "Man, you sound British sometimes."
Yeah, I had to look up how to pronounce it.
Yeah, mufti. You got it.
Mufti.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We always used it at school. The days when we were allowed to not wear school uniform.
Oh, yes. Dress
We were
mufti.
Mufti day. I was like, yeah.
Mufti day. Okay.
And just to be clear, I didn't go to some
Yes.
posh school with school uniforms. Pretty much all English schools have school uniforms.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
It did cross my mind that maybe you went to a fancy
No, didn't.
school. Well, Lemore is dressed now in mufti. Tyrion has cracked the Griff and Young Griff mystery, but Lemore is something else.
Young Griff is sulky, so Tyrion suggests cyvasse. Tyrion uses the game as a way to teach Young Griff some lessons, strategy, life, so on. Tyrion marvels at Lord John Connington's loyalty to the grandson of the man who stripped him of titles and banished him to Essos, which in turn was a shame because had John Connington been on hand, he might have saved baby Aegon during the sack. Fake Aegon is baited. It wasn't me. Atana's son was sold to Varys for wine. The mother had died in childbirth. Then the switch, and Varys takes the baby to Mopatis to be raised by John Connington on a pole boat. Quite the story.
Indeed. Tyrion expresses doubts that Dany will accept Aegon, or Fagon, or Young Griff, or whatever we want to call him at this point.
I decided we'd just bounce around between Aegon, Fagon, and Young Griff.
That works. Given her feats to date, she may be Aegon the Conqueror's true heir. Fagon is dismissive. Tyrion doesn't know her. But Tyrion can piece together some things from her life story. Privation and fear as a child, brutality from her brother, sold to a Dothraki, now heads an army, hatches dragons, frees slaves. She's not going to swoon into Fagon's arms, no matter how pretty he is. Fagon thinks John Connington will seal the deal. Tyrion advises him to trust no one, especially Mopatis and Varys.
Tyrion suggests an alternate plan. Go west. Make for Dorne. The Seven Kingdoms are in disarray. Dorne would welcome their scion with open arms and raise his standard, but act quickly. Cersei will fall, and inevitably someone more competent will take her place, and the chance may be gone. Victory wouldn't even be necessary. Just hold out long enough so that Dany and the dragons arrive. Then Aegon is not a beggar, but an equal. Tyrion wins the game of cyvasse. Young Griff flips the board and orders Tyrion to pick up the pieces. Tyrion thinks he might be a Targaryen after all.
He just might. That's the most compelling evidence thus far. Well, Yandri and Ysilla arrive back with provisions. Ysilla is scared of Tyrion and doesn't want him to touch any of the food. They rouse Griff to hear the gossip. Dany stays in Meereen, beset on all sides. The roads are lethal. By sea is better, if you have ships. Griff takes Yandri aside for the unalloyed truth. He wants verification of what he's hearing, so he sends Haldon to find a man named Kavo. The half-maester wants to take Tyrion for his cyvasse playing. Griff doesn't care.
Haldon and Tyrion take in the scene at the docks, sailors and whores. The latter are marked by the tattoos of slavery. They stop to listen to a red priest who is speaking about Daenerys. Haldon translates for Tyrion that Daenerys is the return of Azor Ahai, and all should follow her. Tyrion is glib about devout priests. They find Carvo in an inn, and Tyrion plays cyvasse against him for money. The customs man, that's his job, has learned a lot about Dany in his role, and he's willing to share, now that Tyrion's silver is on the board.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. As the men set up their pieces, Haldon asks for news from Volantis. Will there be war? Kavo says the Yunkai are making it hard to say no. Their envoy has brought chests of gold along with 200 bed slaves. He throws lavish parties and offers exceptional bribes. It seems that only the Triarch Nyesos has been successfully bought. Malaquo is a tiger, so war runs to his platform. As for the third of the Volantene Triarchs, Donifos won't be re-elected. The city wants war.
Tyrion asks what the sweet child queen could have done to offend Volantis. Carvo scoffs at the use of the word sweet. She is anything but. He lists monstrous deed after monstrous deed that she supposedly committed, the next worse than the last. Haldon points out that this is all according to her enemies, but Carvo says there's truth in every calumny.
Carvo explains that Dany hasn't just upset the balance in Slaver's Bay. Her actions have disrupted the worldwide slave trade, affecting lords and peasants alike. Tyrion mentions the Red Priest outside, who was wholly in favor of the Dragon Queen. Carvo thinks the Red Priest would be smart to keep quiet about such matters. Fights have already broken out between the followers of R'hllor and those who keep other gods.
As the gameplay begins, talk turns to the balance of power in the war. Dany has 3 dragons, but she's up against forces from many cities and regions. Even the Dothraki are said to have joined Yonkai's side. The game does not last long, with Carvo wiping the floor with Tyrion. Afterward, Tyrion makes his pitch to Haldon for visiting a pleasure house. Possibly the women will have more information. Haldon concedes, and they plan to meet in a tavern when Tyrion is done.
Tyrion finds a modest brothel and chooses a sunset girl, meaning she has the look of a Westerosi. However, the girl speaks not a word of the common tongue. After failed small talk, Tyrion strips her, and she understands her role. The action did not last long. Afterward, Tyrion is disgusted with himself. He asks if she knows a Taisha, but she fails to even understand the question. He downs a flagon of wine, vomits, and then takes her again.
On his way out, Tyrion loses his footing on the stairs and cartwheels his way down, with all eyes on him from the commotion. He hears someone call out "Imp!" from behind him. Tyrion turns to see a burly man with a silver-haired woman on his lap. The man is undoubtedly from the Seven Kingdoms, as his black bear sigil on his surcoat would suggest. Tyrion says his name is Hugo Hill, and the man growls that Hugo is his. When Tyrion asks what the man plans to do with him, he responds, "Deliver you to the Queen."
Uh-oh.
So, I wanted to have this discussion. We'll have this discussion on air. Are we going to assume we know who that person is?
Yeah, I think it's clear enough that we could discuss it openly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's a slight spoiler because we haven't been told who that is yet, but pretty much immediately we rejoin Tyrion, we're going to find out who this person is. So
yes, and I think the black bear sigil on the surcoat,
I think it's pretty good too. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
He's a knight of the Seven Kingdoms who's alone in Essos, and he's paying for prostitutes in brothels who look like Daenerys.
Right.
And he's wearing a black bear sigil. It is the one and only Jorah Mormont, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, and he's very hairy. The description fits perfectly. You know, everything fits.
Actually, the last piece of evidence is the fact that he says, "I'm going to take you to the Queen," because even though it's Cersei who wants Tyrion's head, you might say, "I'll take you to the king," because Tommen is the king of the Seven Kingdoms.
You might, yes, that's possible.
Yeah.
It is the Queen's bounty, but yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say though as well is, if I was taking him to Cersei, I would only take his head, because
right.
What's the rest point? Of him's just a pain, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So. But we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yeah.
So last Tyrion chapter, not last chapter, Jenny was talking to all of us about this section of that chapter that George Martin had written where Tyrion meets the Shrouded Lord in Croyane and all that. And then he decided he didn't like where it took the story, so he cut it all out. And as Jenny told us in that episode, he left it as just a dream where Tyrion dreamed that the Shrouded Lord and his father were one and the same, and here we are, seeing it right at the beginning of this chapter.
I wonder what the longer dream means. I mean, this dream is kind of like, to me, this dream is sort of like, if you've killed your father, you're going to be very afraid of death if you have any kind of belief in the afterlife.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Because you might assume he's there waiting for you.
That is a logical conclusion you might make in that situation.
Yeah.
But, I thought it was ironic that the two people that Tyrion was arguing with right before the Stone Men attacked the Shy Maid are the same two people that saved his life. Or, well, I guess Lemore as well. But Griff is the one who reached into the water that nobody wants to touch and pulled Tyrion out onto the boat. And Young Griff is the one who doesn't allow Yandri to
throw him back.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
So, although, Tyrion did save Young Griff when he froze when the Stone Man started to come toward him. So
and at that point they knew who he was, right? That was now known.
It had all just come out right before that happened.
Yeah.
But it's also so in this chapter, we mentioned it in the summary that Aegon, Young Griff, Fagon, is kind of irked that he didn't get to go out into the city with Yandri and Ysilla, and he's kind of sulking
let's call it what it is. It's a town. It's not a city.
Yes, it's a town. Yes, and that'll come up again in background effect. So he's kind of annoyed by this. He feels left out, and he claims that he knows how to use a sword. But thinking back to the end of that last chapter, he froze when the moment came. He was, unable to actually use the sword or do anything other than stand there. So,
yeah, that's a good point. I suppose that there's a sort of existential terror that the Stone Men would engender that even a screaming Dothraki might not.
True. Yeah, I could see.
It's not a great sign. I mean,
no.
I'd freeze to both of them, I'm pretty sure, but the Dothraki, at least it's a human coming at you, or at least, would feel like a human coming at you.
Yeah. But did you also notice that there were different reactions to Tyrion post-contamination? Halden keeps the table between him and Tyrion, and Ysilla, she's not even afraid to say, hey, stay away from everything. Stay away from the food.
You can't even touch the food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Meanwhile, when Lemore sees that he is awake, she runs to him and hugs him.
Yeah,
so,
that's interesting because you might think, I mean, she doesn't know for a fact he's cured. He's not caught it because she's treating his extremities with vinegar. So she's also taking precautions against it, but she's not afraid of it like the others are. And it's interesting to me that a maester would be so afraid. The reason I'm kind of curious about the grayscale is Halden's reaction, because Lemore obviously has some medical background, but a maester would have some medical background. Maybe having a medical background makes you even more afraid.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Right? Maybe that's why he's a half-maester. Maybe he skipped out on the medical training.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. But it did make me wonder if he, because didn't he say he studied at the Citadel, but he didn't finish, he didn't complete his chain? Isn't that the story he gave?
That sounds right.
But maybe that's not true. But I mean, he's done some practical medicine, so maybe he did do some training. I just wondered if it cast doubt on his bona fides.
Well, he was also the one when they were in Croyane wearing the mask and say, "Don't even breathe the air."
Yeah.
So he's very
but that's
germaphobe. That's what it is. He's a germaphobe.
Maybe so. But that makes sense because you know that those people are infected. Tyrion apparently isn't, got away with it, sort of like, and to be so scared of him feels like, do you really know what's going on here?
Yeah, maybe. Could make that argument for sure.
So Volantis appears to be very worried that the Dothraki will attack Selhoris. They've sent ships with slave soldiers up the Rhine to defend Selhoris from this Cal that's hoved into view. Tyrion actually makes an interesting sort of strategic plan of saying if he was the Dothraki, that he would consider a feint attack, on Selhorys. And when the Volantines send troops to protect it, then swing south and attack Volantis itself. Now, that's plausible. You might need a very large force to attack a city the size of Volantis. I mean, that's the one thing.
Agreed. Volantis is a major city. It's the most populous of the free cities.
Right.
And it's not like it's sitting undefended. The eastern side has the Black Walls, which are 200 feet tall and incredibly thick and protects the city's upper crust. And we know that Volantis has hundreds of river galleys and a large slave army, which they never say, but you have to imagine that the slave army is very likely unsullied.
Yeah,
you would think.
Plausible. Yeah,
but they never say whether they are or not. They just talk about their tiger stripes on their cheeks. But then the western side of the city is protected by the long bridge, and then when they, Tyrion has this thought while they're still on the Shy Maid, but when they meet Cavo later in the town, he dismisses the Dothraki, saying, "We give them gifts, they leave us alone."
Right. Which makes the whole Volantine thing even more strange, kind of. It's like, well,
right.
No, the Volantine thing isn't that strange because those war galleys probably convinced the Dothraki, let's just take the offering and be on our way. We don't need to get into this. But you're right. The Volantines can afford to do what they're doing without risking Volantis itself.
Yeah, I think so. And even the fact that Volantis is south of Selhorys, the Dothraki could ride for Volantis, but the river galleys would be traveling downstream
with
the flow of the water.
Yeah. They'd be there pretty quickly, yes.
You'd think they could beat the horses there. So,
yeah.
But then later, Cavo says that the Dothraki will fight with Volantis against Daenerys, and we'll get into the ramifications of that later. But it doesn't seem like at least he is not concerned about their presence.
Yeah. So Lemore, being in mufti, meaning civilian clothes, she explains this by saying the sentence, "You," talking to young Griff, "are not the only one who must needs hide."
Uh-huh.
Now,
who's the other she's referring to?
Yes, so she's talking to young Griff. Young Griff needed to hide his identity, but why does she need to hide hers? So if she was who she claimed to be, Septa Lemore, then she probably would say something like, "My robes might lead people to speculate as to your origin." But that's not what she said. She said, "You're not the only one who needs to hide," which really brings into sort of like immediate focus, like, well, who are you then? Why do you need to hide?
Why do you need to hide?
And if Tyrion's anything like me, his would have gone down a rabbit hole on that particular sentence and been like consulting every Reddit thread he could find about who the hell this woman is.
Well, he has wondered, the first Shy Maid chapter, he wondered who she was. And, she's a septa with stretch marks and not really much in the way of modesty as far as being naked in front of other people.
Right. Okay. So with that in mind, she could have been a nobody with a backstory.
Right. And no need to hide.
Exactly. And if she was a nobody with a backstory pretending to be Septa Lemore, then it wouldn't have mattered. But she didn't say that. She said, "You're not the only one who needs to hide." So down the rabbit hole.
But I like your distinction, because if she was a septa who doesn't want to go out in Selhorys dressed like a septa, she would comment on the fact that she needs to go out incognito.
To blend in. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I'll focus on three possible candidates. Well, actually, I'll list a few, but then I'm going to focus in on just three. Okay, so the names I've heard are Melora Hightower. Have you ever mentioned her before?
She's come up, the Mad Maid.
Yeah. Lyanna Stark, Elia Martell, Ashara Dane, and Sarah Mopatis. Uh-huh. Believe me, that is the tip of an iceberg if you start going into this one. There's a lot of names being bandied around. Like, fact that she knew how to bring have to get the water out of Tyrion's lungs when he was drowning was used as evidence that she was a Greyjoy.
That might be a bit of a stretch.
Everything here is a stretch, believe me.
Yes.
So I say I'm going to focus on three, but actually, really, I'm going to focus on three categories, really. So the first category is who, and I'm going to put.
I like that category name.
So I'm putting Melora Hightower in there. So if George Martin means for this woman to be Melora Hightower, he doesn't need to hide it from us. We don't know who that is.
Right. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. The thing about Melora Hightower is that she's famously unmarried. And the last we heard about her, after the attacks on the Reach started by the Ironborn, she supposedly locked atop the High Tower with her father Leighton consulting spellbooks. So no one knows. We don't know whether that's true or not. But
that is a good cover story if you are actually off in a different continent pretending to be a scepter. But
yes, it is.
Other people who fall into the who category are Lady Piper. That's the Greyjoy I was just mentioning. She married into the Greyjoys and learned how to bring back people from drowning.
I guess.
And Wenda the White Fawn. I mean, apparently Wenda the White Fawn is people love her as a candidate. But I'm just like, if this woman's name is Wenda the White Fawn, then when we get on the Shy Maid, introduce her to us as Wenda the White Fawn, because the reveal will be meaningless when it comes because we don't know who that is.
Yes, very minor references to her thus far.
All right, category 2 is the already dead. So the three examples I gave in my first list for that are Lyanna Stark, definitely dead, Elia Martell, extremely dead, and Ashara Dane, known to be dead. So if any of those is Lemore, then this is a massive disruption in the space-time continuum.
Agreed.
And all three of them would have fascinating implications and ramifications for the whole story. So I would love it to be one of those three. But it's a bit cheesy, right? Especially with Aegon himself being that same storyline.
Yeah, especially if it was Elia. Because Elia would just be his mother. Like his actual mother. Right.
And she may play a role to pretend to not be his mother, to stay close with him and help raise him. The reason I really don't like Elia is, what about the daughter? Rhaenys, is it?
Yeah. They didn't
Did you just let her die while you and the little one fled?
Yes, that's terrible. That would be terrible parenting.
Right.
You and I are going to get out of here. Rhaenys, you're left to your own devices. Hide under the bed. That's so awful.
But hang on, some 20-year-old, kid might turn up and she's another one. They all escape together, But it's getting more and more like a soap opera at this point. If you ask me. So I don't I would love it to be those on some levels, but I would be a little bit disappointed if it was any of those as well.
Well, so yes, you're right. Major upheaval if it were any of these three, Lyanna, Elia, or Ashara. And mostly because their deaths, especially Lyanna and Elia, they're key characters because
they died.
They're dead. Yes. Yeah. The physical description fits. They all have dark hair, which is basically the only real physical description we get about Lemore. I forgot her name for a second. The age is close enough. It's Tyrion tells us that she's over 40, and I looked it up. Elia is somewhere in early 40s, 43, 44. Lyanna is 33 to 34-ish. And then Ashara is somewhere between 30 and 40. So that would work. But I'm not sure how you get Lyanna to the Royne when Ned saw her die at the Tower of Joy.
Yeah.
Unless...
And the Ashara one seems to fall down on her eyes, because Ashara's eyes were supposed to be incredibly striking. And to the best of my knowledge, Tyrion has never noticed Lemore's eyes. I mean, he's looking at her chest. That can happen. But eventually you might think he'd notice her eyes.
Yes, that is the big one there. The reason for her jumping from the tower to her death has never been explained. So this could be a plausible cover story for her disappearance. And why? Because now in this chapter, and I think possibly the previous chapter, Tyrion mentions that John Connington was Rhaegar's dearest friend.
Right.
But Barristan, back when he was Arstan, told Dany that yes, John Connington and Rhaegar were dear friends, but that Ashara's older brother Arthur was not only a member of the Kingsguard, but Rhaegar's closest friend. So, there is some overlap there that maybe with the death of her brother, she has decided to fake her death and go be there for Rhaegar's son. But like you said, the eyes. There is no way he doesn't point. He pointed out Aegon's eyes before we knew he was Aegon, that they changed colors.
Right.
There's no way he would not point out her violet eyes.
So fan fiction, knock yourselves out. Write the story of any of those three, and it'll be a lot of fun to read. But it's not going to be the real story, I don't think. Now, the third category is the reveal, and the only one I've actually just put directly in this category is Sarah Mopatis. Ilyrio Mopatis' second wife. Sarah has the very great advantage of being both plausible. Mopatis has said she was dead, but it happened. Did he say? Yeah, he said she was dead. Yeah.
Yeah, grayscale or.
That's a perfect disease for faking a death because no one's going to want to go and find out. You see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. It's gray death, technically. It was the mortal form of grayscale. But,
right.
Yes.
She's a solid choice for. See, the second category, the Asharas, the Elyas, they're a good candidate for why George Martin would hide it from us because there's a looming reveal coming. Yeah. Right. The Wind of the White Fawns, they're stupid for him to hide it from us, and there's no reason as a storyteller to hide that from us. So those are discounted. But Sarah is it wouldn't be a huge reveal to discover she's Sarah Mopatis because we've never met her before. But what it would reveal is the truth about young Griff.
Yes.
And that's the key. See, that's why this is the one that I've gravitated to, because it makes sense if young Griff is potentially the child of Mopatis and Sarah.
Right.
He pushes them out because he's got hopes for young Griff to become the next king of Westeros. It's a bold move, but it kind of hangs together. But that being said, Aegon's story hangs together too. There wasn't much wrong with Aegon's story that I could see.
Yeah, no. But you're right. I mean, obviously, if he is the son of Ilyrio and Sarah, he is not Aegon, the son of Rhaegar and Elia.
But it's simpler than that. If this is Sarah Mopatis, young Griff is not Rhaegar Targaryen.
Right. At the very most, he is if he is anything aside from just a boy, he would be a Blackfire, if he is the daughter of Sarah, son of Sarah.
Yes, if this is Sarah Mopatis, there's a 99.9% probability that young Griff is, in fact, a Blackfire through her.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So
now, the description doesn't fit great because she is said to have silver gold hair and blue eyes.
Yeah.
You could dye her hair, but why would if she is not someone that is known to many people, why bother dyeing your hair?
Was she so strikingly beautiful that you would have to do that just to sort of, it'd be too...
She was to Ilyrio.
Right, exactly, yeah. So yeah, I'm not convinced on any of them, but I think to me, the most plausible reveal is a reveal that gives away more of the story, rather than a reveal that unearths something that we didn't think was possible until now,
Yeah.
So that's where my head has gone.
We have to keep in mind that line that Ilyrio gave Tyrion about the Golden Company breaking their contract with Myr, where he said it's something along the lines of some oaths are writ in ink and some in blood.
Yep.
And we know that the Golden Company stems from Blackfire roots.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that's still hanging out there, and we don't have a great answer for it yet.
The one thing about that is, and what you're hinting at is a very plausible explanation for that line. However, the one thing about that is, would you reveal that to them? That you're
Right.
this whole thing hinges on a very big lie. If that's not Aegon Targaryen, this is a very big lie that very few people need to be in on if it's going to stand the test of time. Would you tell sellswords?
Right. Sell is the first part of that word. They can sell information just as quickly as they could sell their swords.
Yeah.
But there's a few others that I had heard of, such as the mother of Tyene Sand. Tyene, the daughter of Oberyn and BFF of Arianne Martell.
And she kind of falls into the reveal category as well, because she's not a very well-known character, but a character that we're aware of the existence of, and so and it would move the storyline forward to discover this. So I can kind of see that.
It would also tie him further into
Back
the
to
Martells.
Dawn. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, again, we have never met Tyene's mother, but we know that Tyene has fair hair and fair skin. We know Oberyn has dark hair. We know that Lemore has dark hair. So, but you would think if Oberyn has dark hair and Tyene has light hair, that her mother would have light hair, which the description wouldn't line up. Great, is what I'm getting at there.
Yes, I get it. I follow what you're saying, yes.
Right.
Yeah. Honestly, you could have just said the seed is strong. I would have understood straight off the bat.
I know. Why did I go with that? But another one, again tying back to Dorne, is Lady Ilyrio, the estranged wife of Doran. Now, the physical description matches.
Uh-huh.
But the problem, there's some issues there because she's from Norvos, and Tyrion has never mentioned any Asasi type accent.
Right.
And being from Norvos, she'd have little to no knowledge of the faith of the Seven. So someone would have had to teach her in order for her to at least pretend to teach.
But she was in Dorne
Aegon.
for a while, right? She wasn't like, she didn't just come for 5 minutes.
Yeah, she was there for a bit, I guess. Yeah, she had 3 kids. So.
Yeah.
But that also, Doran, her estranged husband, has the plan to marry their son Quentyn to Daenerys. So why would Ilyrio go and disrupt that unless it's to ruin her estranged husband's plans and make her own plans instead?
This, the child would be her nephew.
Yes.
But not by blood, by marriage, right?
Yes.
Elia
wife.
is
yes.
Doran's sister.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Aegon
Nephew.
would be her nephew. So she would have a fun. I mean, if she believes it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
But again, there you go. Again, that's a reveal that would push the storyline forward. You know. So yeah,
Right.
I'm good with that. But these unknowns don't make any sense, and the reincarnation of the dead doesn't seem to work for me. So yeah, that's good reveal candidates there. I'll take any one of those.
And one little detail that comes up, it's ironic that Lemore treats Tyrion with vinegar. Because last Tyrion chapter, Halden said that maesters believe in such methods like hot baths and mustard poultices and limes, and that those in the faith believe in prayer, sacrifice, and fasting. But here is Lemore using the physical means rather than the spiritual means to try and heal him. So is that more evidence that she's not truly a septa that's kind of subtly thrown in there?
Yeah. Okay, let's jump out of that rabbit hole and go into the next rabbit hole.
Yes,
which is who is young Griff? Now, I will say, so the story as they presented it made a certain amount of sense. Varys sees the end coming. He goes to Flea Bottom. He finds a tanner whose wife died in childbirth. He has a baby he doesn't know what to do with. He buys the baby for Arbor Gold. The tanner already has sons, but he's never drunk Arbor Gold. That's a nice little detail, gives it a feeling of truth, you know. They switch the babies and they get Aegon out of there, send him to Ilyrio Mopatis, and, you know, it survives. I have one major stumbling block for that story. I mean, I have quite a few major stumbling blocks, but I have one major one, which is that Mopatis hosted the what would they be to Aegon?
Uncle
they would
and
be
aunt.
Uncle and aunt. Exactly.
Yeah.
The uncle and aunt of Aegon. For around 6 months, he hosted them in Pentos. Why did he not mention it? Why did he not mention that he raised their nephew for a short period of time before sending him to a pole boat? Now,
yeah.
I will say, I'll jump in and give the answer that I would expect you to give, which is he took stock of Viserys, included that psycho would murder his nephew in a heartbeat, and so decided to stifle the news.
Yeah.
That actually does track. Okay, so that's where we are now. But since Viserys' death, Mopatis has sent Strong Belwas, Arstan, Varystan to Dany and 3 ships. He has had a chance to tell her.
Right. Yeah.
But here's the thing. So I'm like, so that makes me think it's not true. But then the flip side of that is, well, okay, if that's not true, Mopatis is selling a different lie. He would have equal reason to tell that story to Dany at the same opportunity, and he didn't do it. He didn't do that either. So
right
now I don't know what anything means. I've given up.
Now we're just running in circles. Yeah, possibly he wasn't ready to reveal. First of all, he didn't expect Dany to survive the trip to Vaes Dothrak,
right?
You know? And maybe he didn't trust telling Barristan or Strong Belwas, and he wanted Dany to find out in person from Aegon himself, I guess.
But Barristan would be an interesting one, because Barristan, of course, thinks of himself as a loyal Kingsguard to the Targaryens.
If you're going to tell anyone a secret, he's the guy.
Right, because let's assume Aegon does arrive in Meereen and presents himself and says, "Hey, I'm your nephew." It would be useful for the Aegon cause if her most trusted advisor went, "I did hear that he was still alive. I couldn't believe it, but now here he is in front of you,
Yeah, at least that would give her time to process it instead of just springing him on her.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But
let me just throw in one thing. I do think Varys' part of this story gives it a little bit more believability. Because we know that Varys and Mopatis are plotting.
Right.
And if they are in on this secret, that they actually secreted Aegon out of King's Landing before the sack, then their plotting becomes very obvious at that point. They're plotting to bring him back. They found this one kid who, for once, was not the child of incest in the Targaryen line. He has a noble name.
Right.
They could bring him back and get rid of all of the usurpers that have, ruined the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah. And plus they can raise him in the image that they want him to be raised in.
Right.
They have more control over him.
Right.
But there's one thing.
You're going to ruin all this, aren't you? All of my thoughts are going to crumble.
No. There's this concept around the fandom, this theory that whenever Arbor Gold is evoked, lies are as well. It's basically called Lies in Arbor Gold. And so, as you mentioned, Aegon's story is that Varys bought the son of a tanner for a jug of Arbor Gold. And so here we go. Arbor Gold is being evoked. The most notable and where this term Lies in Arbor Gold stems from, before and after meeting with the Lord's Declarant, Littlefinger told Sansa about feeding Nestor Royce lies in Arbor Gold. And then later, Sansa recalls lies in Arbor Gold before telling Peter Baelish that she will commit to being Elaine full-time again with the lies. And we know that Littlefinger was telling lies to the Lord's Declarant. In fact, it was a whole staged thing that Lynn Corbray drew as steel. He was actually paid to do that. Also, I'm just giving you some examples. Tyrion offers Sansa Arbor Gold on their wedding night when they are faking their bedding. Remember, they were supposed to be...
Right.
What's the word I'm looking for? They were supposed to be consummating their
marriage. That's the word you're looking for.
Instead, they were not, yes. Remember Leo Tyrell from the Feast for Crows prologue? He twice asked someone to buy him arbor gold, and nobody in the group trusts him, but it was also, that scene was followed directly by the deceit from the alchemist to poor Pate.
Yes.
Who ended up what we thought was dead, and then at the last Sam chapter, all of a sudden
Not
it wasn't
dead
dead.
again.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of instances like Cersei and Tyanna.
It's a
They stayed up
revolving
late.
door, that death thing.
Yeah, it really is. Wait, maybe Pate is Lemore. But there's a scene where Tyanna and Cersei stayed up late drinking arbor gold and telling tales, and we've questioned from the beginning Tyanna's motives and their friendship.
So what you're saying boils down to arbor gold is used as a motif for lying in this book.
Yes.
When arbor
So
gold
that's
is
what I'm
in the
saying.
mix, it's a very teetotaler attitude you've taken there, Mackelly. See, I'm firmly of the opinion that the arbor gold would bring the truth out.
Right.
But no, that's a really interesting thought. It does make you think, God, how much time and effort did George Martin put into this? Maybe he has got an excuse for taking this long.
Yeah, no wonder it's taken him more than a decade to write.
Yeah,
Winds.
because think about that. Think about those instances that you've put in there. He's like, I'm going to write a scene in which there's going to be some half-truths said. Let me make sure I put a cup of arbor gold into the mix. Like,
right.
Because in 5 books' time, I'm going to use that motif again. It's like, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I was thinking that same thing. If all that is true, that is masterful storytelling.
Exactly. I mean, it's wasted on plebs like us because, like, on 1 read, you would never even notice it. On 2 reads, you wouldn't notice it. You'd have to have a wiki dedicated to it and a bunch of lunatics spending their entire lives talking about it to get to that point.
That's the reason for this long break. He's letting us all digest every detail of these first 5 books before he springs the rest on us.
Clever.
Now it makes sense.
Anyway, let's move on. We've had enough of these rabbit holes. Tyrion gives his thoughts on who he thinks Dany is based on her accomplishments. We, of course, know Dany far better than Tyrion does. But I'll tell you this. Here's my opinion of his opinion. He's got a handle on her. He doesn't know her that well, but he nailed it. She's a rescuer, and she isn't going to fall at the feet of Aegon when he arrives.
Well, yes, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now what I expect to happen is, because in the notes there's a question, you've lured me into one answer just so you can then tear it down and explain why I'm wrong. So go on, knock yourself out.
Now, all I was going to say is Tyrion points out many of the issues that Jenny and I raised last Tyrion chapter about what's going to happen when Dany, if or when Dany discovers Aegon exists. And the primary issue is he is older and has a better claim to the Iron Throne.
Right.
And that's going to be something she's going to... on one hand, I'm sure she'll be incredibly excited to learn that she has a full-fledged, full-blood relative living that is the son of her older brother that she's heard almost entirely good things about, especially from Barristan.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, she has... her whole identity is tied up in the fact that she is the queen. She is the ruler. And now here comes this nephew of hers that has a better claim. That is going to be problematic, I feel like.
For sure. Okay, thank you for not tearing me apart.
Tyrion says that he's going to show up as a beggar with a small army. I'd say the Golden Company is a fairly formidable force. And more importantly, they have ships to help her get her people to Westeros. You know, that is certainly not nothing.
But I will say, I really like Tyrion's alternative plan. Now, obviously, Aegon has, since birth, been given a story by Mopatis, Connington, Lemore, all of these people have been telling him a certain thing, and they've been working towards that. Although it must have changed recently because Daenerys' arrival has been, disruptive. The plan cannot have been to go to Meereen and prostrate ourselves before Cal Daenerys.
Yes, right.
But
yeah,
the plan the plan that Tyrion offers, I think is a very interesting thought, because what I really liked about it was go to Dorne, be welcomed there as a hero because you are a son of Dorne,
right.
Raise your standards there, and then don't even try to win the Seven Kingdoms. Just make your claim and stay put. Frolic in the water gardens. Work on your suntan. And when those dragons are big enough to put the fear of God into everybody, your auntie will arrive, and then you've got the whole of Dorne behind you, and the two of you can take King's Landing.
Yes, that is I think what you just laid out there is a better explained version of what Tyrion, I think, is what he is getting at.
Oh,
I think you laid it out better than Tyrion did, in a more a more common sense path there. Yeah, well, so first of all, Tyrion says to young Griff, go without Dany. She'll eventually join you in Westeros, and you'll meet as equals. And I thought, well, Dany still has the 3 dragons.
That's
so
true.
That's going to keep things unequal,
But the one thing about the dragons is that, I mean, the dragons have the dragon has 3 heads. I don't know about you, but I'm expecting 3 people to ride these dragons.
Agreed. Yes, I think that has to be the plan.
Exactly. If this is Aegon Targaryen, those dragons are going to go, he's our boy.
Right. Yes.
And if this is
one of them will.
If this is Griff Blackfire, then the dragons will be like, yeah, okay, maybe.
50-50 shot.
If he's anyone else, he probably doesn't want to do this at all.
No.
Keep his distance.
But I do wonder if, okay, so let's say he executes this plan and he goes to Westeros and he raises his standard. If word gets back to Dany, which you would think is part of the plan, right? Dany needs to know that she has to go to Westeros. Otherwise, this is part of the issue, is that Tyrion doesn't know just how mired Dany is in Meereen right now.
Right.
So I think part of the plan is they assume she will come sooner than I think she is planning on.
I see what you're saying. But
yes.
But the nice thing about Tyrion's plan is Aegon can grow up alongside the dragons, But he's older than Dany.
He is.
I keep forgetting that. He's older than his auntie.
Right.
So okay,
not by a lot.
So everybody has to grow up. Yeah.
Yes.
You know,
right. The dragons, especially.
The dragons in particular, they're the ones we really need to grow up. But the 2 children, they need to grow up a little bit as well. I think he'll be perfectly fine in Dorne, sort of like saber rattling the 7 kingdoms. But you're right. Tyrion is thinking she's going to come. She has to get there soon enough that Cersei is still on the throne.
Right.
Because she's the weakness of the rest of the 7 kingdoms, is Cersei.
Yes.
And just there, so now we think that probably at the end of this chapter, Tyrion is being taken in chains to Daenerys. We see what he can offer her, because his understanding of the 7 kingdoms is better than anybody. That the 7 kingdoms turmoil centers around Cersei, and the minute she's deposed, it'll be a lot more difficult to overcome the entrenched forces of the 7 kingdoms, because not everyone is going to welcome the dragons with open arms.
Right, and I think Tyrion is showing some of his worth, some of the reason that Ilyrio wanted him as part of the group.
Right. But also, if he is being taken to Meereen, what he could offer Daenerys, not just a target practice for her crossbow for being a Lannister, but actually an interesting advisor who can give her, useful counsel.
Right. He has intimate knowledge of Cersei's character.
Yeah.
And what she's doing to destroy all of the alliances that her father built.
And Kevin's too. He also mentions that Kevin would be very competent, but he was always raised to be a follower, not a leader, and so
Right.
he doesn't really want it.
But do you think this info would cause Dany? Remember, she almost left when Zarazo and Daxus offered the 13 ships. Do you think if she finds out, wait, my nephew is in Westeros raising the Targaryen sigil and claiming to be the king? Okay, I'm sorry, Myronese, but I've got to go. My kingdom is being taken.
No, I don't think that. I don't think that. I think it wouldn't change her timeline at all. I think she would be pleased to hear it in some ways, and she would find a way. I mean, ultimately, they would find a way to share the throne in some manner.
Right. Kind of like I think I made this analogy in the last Tyrion chapter. Kind of like Jaehaerys and Alysanne Targaryen. Like,
right.
But the thing is Jaehaerys is the king. He's the one with the final say.
Yeah.
Daenerys, Alysanne was always raised in his shadow as his confidant, his person, but also his wife and queen.
What Daenerys should do is have the same deal with Aegon as I have with Carson. We get equal votes, but in the event of a tie, she gets the deciding vote. Right.
That might work. That might work.
Her and her 3 dragons get the deciding vote. Just one of the sort of like side piece of this chapter is that I thought it interesting that the Red Clergy of R'hllor aren't all on the same page with regards to Azor Ahai. Maybe as a religion, because I sort of always thought maybe the hierarchy of this religion had sent Melisandre to Westeros because they had in the fires seen that Azor Ahai had risen and they wanted her to counsel him. But here we've got a different Red Priest saying, yeah, Azor Ahai has risen, but it's Daenerys Targaryen. So obviously there's either unwitting rifts or there's no plan here.
Right. It's starting to seem like maybe Melisandre's on some sort of rogue type mission. Maybe she caught wind of Stannis on Dragonstone and made the leap that he's Azor Ahai on her own without any backing.
She could be rogue and this guy could be rogue. The hierarchy might be like, stop with the Azor Ahais already.
Well, yeah, except for this Benero that this priest mentions. This priest that's here in Soloris mentions that Benero has named Dany Azor Ahai, and Benero seems to be the top priest of R'hllor. He had some very lofty titles, including the first servant of the Lord of Light. It seems like he is the one who is that on
maybe
high.
Just to give Melisandre she's not a rebel shots, perhaps. Maybe Benero sent her, I think we found him, go chew to him. And then things didn't work out, Battle of the Blackwater, he's like, let's try again. All right, let's try Daenerys Targaryen. Yeah.
Right. Well, her, we've discussed this before. Dany fits the prophecy much better than Stannis does. When you start breaking down all the details, all the things that make someone Azor Ahai reborn. So
yeah,
I don't know. We'll have to see. It does seem like they need to have some sort of conference where all the Red Priests get together. Wait, who do you think is Azor Ahai? Oh, I've been telling people that this one is Azor Ahai.
All right, we're gonna have a melee to the death for all the Azor Ahais. Yeah.
Well, we do get some updates on the Volantene political scene. Last Tyrion chapter, we learned that Triarch Naesos had been bought, and Griff was very upset about that because, according to Griff, Ilyrio had bought the man many times over to be on Dany's side, or at least on Aegon's side, and now we learned that possibly he's not. But we had heard about Malaquo. So we knew about those 2 triarchs, but now we learn about the 3rd triarch in this chapter, a person named Donaphos.
And he's a tiger, right? So
he is an elephant.
Oh, he's an elephant.
Yeah, there's always 2 elephants and a tiger since the end of the Century of the Blood.
Okay.
But we knew, I mean, Malaquo, he didn't really need to be bought because he's a tiger, so he is prone to seek war. That's why Nyesos was bought and why they called him in the last Tyrion chapter an elephant with stripes.
Right.
But it seems this Donifos wants to either support Dany or stay out of it and keep the peace in the city. And Cavo thinks that he's going to lose the re-election because the city thirsts for war. So, and then Cavo explains about how it's more than just Slaver's Bay affected by Dany's actions, that Volantis runs off of slaves too. 5-1 is the number we keep hearing. So, it's been the whole worldwide slave trade that's been disrupted. And it's everyone from lords to the lowly commoners alike that want her dead because they both fear repercussions. The lords worry that the slaves are going to rise up and overthrow them. And the commoners, they're elevated only over slaves.
Yes, the only thing they're above is a slave, yeah.
Yes, and they don't want to lose that little status that they have. So
yeah. So on the sort of human level, the forces are arrayed against her, but also on the sort of macro level, they are as well. Cavo says that Nugis, Tolos, Iria, an island in Slaver's Bay, they're all heavily involved in the slave trade. The Dothraki, all of these are now arrayed against Dany.
Yeah. The only one that seems a little bit out of place there is the Dothraki. You would think, on the surface, Dany's a former Khaleesi to one of the most powerful Khals, so maybe they would be on her side.
Again, they're in the slave trade. They are. That's the thing that's going to bring them against her for sure.
Yeah,
and there's no loyalty between the Dothraki either.
Right. And she's supposed to be living in Vaes Dothrak after Drogo's death.
Right.
That's what happens.
She's breaking tradition too. Yeah.
Yes. So,
just quick mention that Tyrion is a sad wreck of a man in many ways, but his contempt and treatment of the lady companion were pretty hard to swallow. Drunkenness is only a very partial excuse. As I've said before, the alcohol brings out the truth, not the lies.
Right. But yeah, this is the second woman in Essos that he's been kind of appalling toward. Do you remember Ilyrio sent a woman to his chambers?
Yeah.
And at first he tried to be kind of typical nice-ish Tyrion to her, and then he changed his tune when he saw the relief in her eyes when he said, "No, I'm not interested." And then I was thinking, these are the first women that he's had these types of interaction with since Shay, since the falling out with Shay when she betrayed him. Maybe he's not allowing himself to connect with women that he's in a transactional situation with, and he's embracing the whole little monster moniker.
Yeah.
And,
you could be transactional without being awful, and he's failing
Absolutely.
badly on that.
Yeah, yes, he is.
So, just the last comment about Jorah. If he's trying to win back favor with Daenerys by taking Tyrion to her, he must be drunk, because you and I can see how Tyrion could be useful to her, but just on the surface, what is he to Daenerys? I mean, it's like, you've been banished and exiled. Why are you here? And why are you bringing me this,
Right. Yes. So so possibly he could have meant Cersei when he said the queen.
Yeah, okay. If he meant Cersei, then it's not Jorah Mormont.
Well, yeah. Well, okay, but even if it were, okay, he could take him to Cersei, get a lordship and riches, but if he wanted a lordship, he could just return to Bear Island.
Right.
He's been pardoned. I believe he was pardoned by Robert for
Ned
spying.
Stark is long gone.
Hey, the other thing I was going to say. Nobody in the North is paying attention anyway.
Unless he's Haldan Halfmaester.
Right. That's Ned. But okay, so yes, if this is Jorah Mormont, which it's not been confirmed, but it certainly seems to fit the bill, then it's most likely he meant Dany, right? So
yes,
maybe Tyrion, if he wasn't so drunk, could talk Jorah into returning to the Shy Maid. Jorah joining this group, being part of the plan to add the Golden Company to Dany's ranks and pave a path to Westeros for her.
That's very true. Yeah, that could work. Yeah, but it's not going to because he's going to be too drunk. The other facet of it is that Jorah needs to. If Jorah really thinks this can help his case, he needs to cultivate Tyrion's usefulness. You know,
right? Yeah,
not gag him and stuff him in a bag. You know, and drag him back. he's got to befriend him and teach him about what Daenerys needs, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it depends on why he feels the need to bring him to Daenerys in the first place.
Yeah, I think basically he's going to wander Essos until he finds any object that he thinks is worth bringing to her, and then he's going to bring it to her. It's like, what about this?
What about this? So, yeah, he's got two options. Bring Tyrion by himself, just Tyrion, or bring Tyrion plus an army, plus a living family member, you know?
Yeah, but of course you're right. He doesn't know any of that yet.
Right. Tyrion would have to convince him.
Yeah, that could be how it goes, yeah. All right, we need to move on. This thing is taking forever. All right, it's time for some spoilers. If you join us at the upper tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer levels, you can get in on the spoilers. They're always fascinating. All right, thank you for the spoilers. How about some background?
All right, well, this chapter takes place in Selhorys. Although larger than Westerosi cities such as Old Town and King's Landing, in Essos, it's still considered a town. Remember I told you earlier that was going to come back up again.
You did tell me that, I remember.
It would be a very large city in Westeros, but here in Essos, just considered a town. The town gets its name because it sits at the confluence of the Roine and the Selhoru River. The major tributaries that flow into the Mother Roine are given nicknames as the daughters of their mother. The Selhoru is nicknamed the Shy Daughter. It's the second most southern tributary. Only the Volena meets the Roine further south, just north of Volantis, and oddly, the Volena doesn't have a daughter nickname. I'm not sure why that river didn't get one, but if it did, I don't know about it.
The last daughter.
I guess, yeah, that's right. Anyway, so Selhorys has been under Volantene control since the Century of Blood, when Volantis reached far and wide, claiming territories. And as we learn in this chapter, it's unique in that it sits on the eastern bank of the Roine, which is not a big deal, unless you factor in that its location makes it more susceptible to Dothraki harassment. As far as historical significance, it's at Selhorys that Garren the Great won his first victory over the Valyrian forces in the Second Spice War.
Very nice, thank you. All right, comparison with the television show. Tyrion was captured by Jorah Mormont in the show. Whether that's a spoiler for the book or not, we shall see. He was spotted by Jorah when who was visiting a Daenerys Targaryen-alike prostitute at the time in a brothel. It's a bit unfair on Jorah, the TV show, because he's the only one at rock bottom, whereas in the book they're both kind of at rock bottom.
Yeah, right.
He grabs Tyrion while Tyrion is urinating and away from Varys for a moment. But it's done in Volantis, I believe, is where that was set. And then now I can mention this. The two of them have the run-in with the Stone Men.
Yes.
So that couldn't really have been mentioned earlier because of who. Well, I think I did mention it. I said he and somebody else bump into the Stone Men. It was him and Jorah who did it.
Right. So, right. Good stuff.
Pedantry corner. They've just got a small one, but I think it matters. Okay. If you're testing your extremities, I'm thinking of grayscale, something like leprosy, where you lose sensitivity at the ends of your extremities. Yeah. Tyrion pricks the ball of his thumb with the.
It's kind of low. Is that what you're thinking?
That's not your extremity.
Right.
That's
right
not even close.
That's the nail.
Right. It's down there. That's the ball. It's where your finger hits your hand, where your thumb hits the hand. So that's just the wrong place to do it.
Yeah, you'd want to do it right below the fingernail, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, if that's insensitive, that's where you test, yeah, you're gonna have to cut off the whole hand if it goes.
But once it gets to that point, yeah.
Exactly, the tip of your thumb is where you want to be testing.
Yes.
All right, just saying.
I see your point.
Mm-hmm. All right, news and notes.
All right, well, so George Martin recently sat down with fellow fantasy author Joe Abercrombie during a promotion of Abercrombie's new book, The Devils. The pair talked about everything.
Joe Abercrombie, help me out here. Is he the Ranger's apprentice, maybe?
I don't think that was him.
That's Flanagan, isn't it? That's a Flanagan thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, carry on. Ignore me.
The pair talked about everything in the fantasy genre except A Song of Ice and Fire. Well, George Martin did make a few offhanded comments and references. He joked about questioning Abercrombie following production deadlines. You actually follow those? And he said he was annoyed that Christian Nairn, Hodor, wrote a book in a summer and it's been 13 years and Martin is still working on Winds. All in good fun, of course. But YouTuber Becca Monet, M-O-N-E-T, recorded a good portion of it. And if anyone's interested in checking it out, you can go look her up on YouTube and watch the video. I watched a few minutes of it. Apparently, they got into a lot of great discussions regarding fantasy books, movies, and shows. I only watched a few minutes, so I don't know exactly.
I've read a few books by Joe Abercrombie, yeah. I don't particularly remember them, but that is not necessarily indicative of their quality.
Right.
We're keeping the Ghost of Harrenhal merchandise site a while longer, so please go visit and fill your boots. ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com.
That's right.
All right, let's conclude this one. Good ideas from Tyrion for Young Griff, but presumably Jorah Mormont isn't going to give Tyrion back anytime soon. So Tyrion's words are probably going to be treated as hollow by the crew of the Shy Maid, who might think he's run away.
Yeah, I would think that. He just ran away.
Yeah. Which is a bit insensitive of him. I'd be quite hurt if I was them. We saved him. Maybe I would give him grace and say he's protecting us from the grayscale that he undoubtedly has by running away.
He was thinking, I feel nothing in any of these extremities.
Exactly. I let her run.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely could be good ideas. If he's right, and Dany comes to Aegon's aid and not comes and says, hey, you stole my throne. That's my throne, not your throne.
Yeah.
But again, she is stuck in Meereen, and who knows when she might leave. You know, maybe news, like I said, maybe news of a new Targaryen claimant to the throne would spur her to do so. You did not think that would be the case.
Yeah, but she's got trouble brewing here in Essos because Volantis is clearly coming down on the side of her enemies, not her. They are,
right,
like all of these cities, they're too invested in the slave trade to side with her.
Yeah, which is another reason why she might possibly prefer that young Griff, Aegon, her nephew, come to her in Meereen instead of go over and start the war that she's not there for yet, because she could use every sword that she can get her hands on at this point.
That's true. And you're using young Griff as a synecdoche for the Golden Company.
Right. Yes, because if
she doesn't actually care one iota about young Griff's arrival, but the Golden Company, that would be very useful for her.
Yes, Tyrion calls them a small army, but right now she needs every bit of the army she can get her hands on.
Yeah. She would literally take young Griff at this point, but for his sword arm. But
right.
if she'd seen his recent performance, she might not bother.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So trouble for Tyrion, almost regardless of which direction he's being taken.
Right.
Neither is necessarily good news. But at least if he's going the direction we think he's going, he's got a chance to make a new start with Daenerys as an advisor to her, I think.
Yes. If this knight who we believe to be Jorah is taking him to Cersei, as you said, he only needs the head. So
yeah.
That could be really bad news.
I will say, of all the people you want to be dragged in front of Daenerys to answer for your crimes against Daenerys by you choose Jorah Mormont. Because she really hates him.
Yes.
So she's
Listen, I did nothing wrong. Look at this guy. Compared to him, I'm your best friend.
Well, we don't have to wait very long before seeing the silver-haired Khaleesi, because the very next chapter is Daenerys, and join us next week for that.
That's right. Should be good.
So as I mentioned, at the moment, there are 4 ways that you can help us out. You can leave us a positive review and a 5-star rating. You can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. There you can become a sustainer at any of the various levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest, and the upper tiers get you the spoilers. Or you can donate directly to our cause through our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com. And as we said, for the moment, you can get some Ghosts of Harrenhal merchandise at our store, ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, you can send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode's show notes. And if you're interested in keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, you can check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal, or on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.